Welcome to another episode of Inspired Content. This is the week we do visual arts and music category. So this week I took the opportunity, which is a while ago now, to explore the local art museum here. It's the Currier Art Museum, and they were doing an exhibit of paper art. So basically people doing things with cut paper and shaped paper. And I went and took a look at some of those exhibits, and now I'm trying to work out the best way to do this sort of discussion of things, and in this case I think what I'll probably try to do is put a still with the name and of the artist and the art that was at the exhibit, the name of the piece, when possible, with a link to, or at least the address to, any links or references to the artist's work on their own site. I don't want to really put up somebody's artwork visually here, especially since some have qualms about other people showing their work. So I will try to do that, and I will make a reference to some of the works. I will try to describe them at least. If you get the chance, you should definitely go check out the exhibit. It's a smaller museum in this area. I don't know if the exhibit's going to go traveling, but I will post a link to the museum as well if you're interested. So, with that in mind, I will take a look at some of the ideas and inspirations that I got from this exhibit. So, first of all, I should rank this exhibit. I would say I give it a 6.7 out of a 6.9 because it deals with paper crafts, which I love, deals with visual arts and creativity, which I love, and it was just a generally good experience. I kind of wish there was more, but if they leave you wanting more, that's probably the right way to go. The artist, Marco Maggi, did their spelling squares, which it's individual slide holders for a slide projector, but instead of slides inside of it were pieces of black paper that were cut in sort of symbols and shapes that stick out in 3 dimensions, and this one kind of made me think of doing like a Rube Goldberg machine, or like a sequential set of mechanisms or things that move and change and shape, but do it with like pop-up book mechanisms and shapes in a sequence that trigger each other. Forest Stroll with Goat by Andrea Deso. This one, they were really, really gorgeous. They were sort of like dioramas, but of semi-translucent paper, or parchment kind of paper, cut out in layers of the image, and it's stacked nice and thick with multiple layers, a little bit space between them with holes and very fine lines, in a sort of a children's storybook sort of image. And I have to admit, there's a part of me This is not my house. I'm not allowed to punch holes in the wall, but I would really like to break a hole into a wall and then set this little other world in paper layers lit from behind by like an LED or something into that hole in the wall. I think that would be amazing. I don't know if I could, make an artwork for an exhibit where you just take a faux wall and punch a hole in it and put that in there, but maybe. Based on Jane South, who does paper sculpture of things that look like they're structural or mechanical models. It is paper craft in the sense of like building full 3D models that look like they're made out of wood or metal pieces, and they have a very kind of not quite deco, but sort of that feel to it, with at least the piece I looked at. The piece was titled, it was an untitled piece apparently, but it's acrylic paper with some wood for support, like a dowel or something for supports in areas, and it was almost like if you take some of those old vintage cars and popped up the hood, and it had some space age fantasy engine inside of it. And so the inspiration I kind of got for this was, I would love to do sort of retro rocket sci-fi ray gun gothic sort of tools, gadgets, ray guns, control panels for a spaceship or a rocket ship, robots, that sort of thing. And I would love to see them made out of paper. Charles Clary did something titled Meticulous Excavations Movement Number 3. And what they did was they took, it looks sort of like blotting paper. They took very thin square dowel, and they cut sort of like topographical maps sort of shapes and stacked them, but each layer is sort of cut with hollows through the center of it, almost like stained glass cutouts. And so as they layer, you get these sort of, it's not something you would see in nature, and it's each layer is done in a different sort of pastel-y bright color, and so the overall look of the thing is just this beautiful, it's hard to describe. Hopefully we can find a link to something like that. But the thing it got me thinking about was doing something like that on a sphere instead of a flat surface laid out in a rectangular or area, and doing it on a spherical surface to make planets that are hung from the ceiling or suspended from underneath, and sort of do a mock solar system of planets that couldn't ever possibly exist in bright stacked hues of topographical surface, and have like a moon and Jupiter and Saturn and just like a Pluto Charon pairing spinning around each other. That would be like it would be large, and I don't know who would store it in any place, but as an exhibit I think it would be a gorgeous piece to see. Maybe you could hang it from a ceiling in a sufficiently high ceilinged room. Nikki Rosato did something called an untitled portrait. It was called Untitled, but it was supposedly a portrait. What she did was, it's sort of a human head that's done with just the roads cut out of an atlas, a color atlas, and laid down because they look sort of like the veins in a head. And I got to thinking, like, it might be kind of fun to do use circuit diagrams, you know, capacitor to resistor to LED kind of thing, but use those layouts to frame out either the skeleton or the nervous system of an android or other robots of different kinds, and just kind of imply these robots are built out of these circuit diagrams, and these circuit diagrams are perfectly functional circuit diagrams to demonstrate how things might move and signals might pass through a limb, but it's taking the written version of what it would be instead of the actual version of what it would be. Yodi Maharjan did something called the altered text of the unbearable lightness of being, in which they took the unbearable lightness of being page of it and cut out every single letter and left the empty space lifted just enough off the page that the shadow casts just enough so it looks like very faint off-white letters on white page that you're seeing the shadow of it. But it was gorgeous, like you could sit there and read it. But and they took they took the letters that they cut out, which must have been an insane amount of work, and they sorted them into groupings. And so the thin, like L and I, were bunched up at the top to make a dark border between the two halves of the script. And as you got to less slender letters where there's more spreading out, it sort of graded the shade so that it was lighter. So it's like L next to I next to L with no space in between them sort of gets you a black line at the top. And as you move down further into it, where you start to get O's and N's and U's, you get more space in the middle of the letters, it becomes grayer, and then it just, they fade it out to like a white strip in the middle, and then fade back into more of the slender letters at the bottom. And I was like, that's really kind of gorgeous. I feel like it would be fun just to take stamped letters and just make mosaics out of letters where you do that same kind of sorted letter thing. I don't think I have the patience to cut out an entire book's worth of letters to do it out of, but taking stamps to make mosaics I can see doing. So those are the ideas I got from this exhibit. This is an experimental way to do one of these videos. Hopefully I get it all worked out so that it makes sense and you can see some of the works of the artists. If not the ones I looked at, then at least some of their other works. And I appreciate some of their works, and hopefully there's some inspiration in there. See you for another episode.